Now it's time to talk some hoops. NBA fans everywhere are still buzzing over the recent Russell Westbrook trade, which will see him reunited with James Harden in Houston. Rick, does this make the Rockets a favorite in the Western Conference? And let's just, before we say that, a favorite after we eliminate the Sacramento Kings, because we know that you like the Sacramento Kings. So besides them, are the Houston Rockets a favorite in the West?
Once again, the championship's coming through California. It's not going through Houston. It's not going through Texas. Listen, it's great to see Harden and Westbrook team up again. They were a lot of fun together. The problem is this, though. They're both so ball dominant now. How are they going to balance each other out in the offense? I was reading they were talking about Harden playing more off ball. I don't see that happening. This guy is so ball dominant himself, and his little not his three-point shots, his little run to the lane or pull fade back, fade away. Like, he's got all these moves with the ball in his hands. He's not – I can't recall him dominating the game off the ball when he was the main guy. And Westbrook, we know he's ball dominant. It's not like he's a good outside shooter. He takes it to the hole. He gets rebounds. He plays decent defense and stuff. I don't see this making them a favorite. I think this keeps them basically where they were at with Chris Paul, although I think Chris Paul was – outside of the issues they had between him and Harden, I think Chris Paul was a better fit for what they were trying to accomplish because at least he has a better either mid-range or outside shot than Westbrook. And I think that helps a lot when you have a guy like Harden. And it's not like Capella is going to be sitting out taking three-point shots or opening up the lane for them. So what are they going to do? They have three guys all trying to get to the lane or all within the key. How's that going to work for Houston? They'll figure it out to some degree, but they're not better than the Clippers. And if you have a fully healthy Golden State team heading into the playoffs, they're not better than Golden State. I'm not saying the Lakers because I hate the Lakers and they're a two-man team. But, I also like Denver. I think Denver has more depth. And I like Utah. I think Utah has more depth. So you got other teams that are still, in my opinion, better than Houston, or at least as good as them. So this doesn't make them this doesn't make them any better than they've been over the last couple of years. If anything, some people argue it makes them a little bit worse. I don't think so. I think they're about the same.
I think it's fair to say they are a favorite. They shouldn't be the favorite. The Clippers should be the favorite, I think, just on the, if you're looking at the rosters, I think it's pretty clear they have the best roster, assuming it can gel the way they think it can. Plus 400 to win the conference, I think, is a little bit short for me. It's better than either LA team, which is at plus 250 and plus 180 for the Clippers. So I wouldn't take those. But if you're arguing that even if they're the same team they were quality-wise, I think that could still be good enough to win the conference, considering Golden State is no longer a thing. And just them falling down means there's not that juggernaut. One of the LA teams may become that, but we don't know. There's enough uncertainty there to where I think you can take a flyer on a team like Houston or like Denver or Utah at more favorable odds, just because we don't know what the LA teams are going to look like. The Lakers could have injuries that could just not gel. Same thing with the Clippers. Houston's more of a known commodity, even if the fit between Harden and Westbrook is questionable, which I admit it certainly is. But I just think on talent, that team is as good as the other teams in the conference. So you're getting them at more favorable odds. They have experience in the playoffs the last few years. Westbrook's been there before, even if none of them have won the whole thing. I don't know. I just think there's good value there. I think there's enough continuity with the Rockets to where I think they should be at the top of the standings once the season comes to an end. And once they get into the playoffs, if they have home court advantage, there's no reason that they can't win the conference. So I wouldn't make them the favorite, but they should certainly be top 4, I think, at season's end.
I think top 4 is maybe number 4 is probably reasonable because, and Taylor and I, we've done a couple of videos on this. Denver and Utah. Denver was the best home team in the NBA last year. They were nearly the best team in the West. Golden State's going to fall out of that top 4 spot. But Utah should be taking steps up. They were a really good team last year, but they should be even better this year, maybe an NBA championship contender. And then you've got the LA teams, much more likely the Clippers than the Lakers, just because even if it takes the Clippers a little longer or the same amount of time as the Lakers to adjust, the Clippers were a playoff team a year ago. The Lakers were not. So they're already starting from closer. And Yeah, I mean, Houston could be the fourth team. They could get a home series, one. I don't know that I would call them the favorite, and I would struggle to call them a favorite when there are 2 to 3 teams that I like better than them. I don't know that you could, when only 8 teams make the playoffs from the Western Conference, that you could say that 4 teams are favorites to win the West. The one thing that would go to that is that it is very likely that the Western Conference is pretty open this year. With Golden State taking a tumble, even if they make the playoffs, if they're a 7 or an 8 seed and Thompson manages to come back, because he should be back in March, is the current projection. Steph and Clay in the postseason makes them a contender. At least if they can get through whatever their first round matchup is going to be, because they're going to have a really difficult road for the first time in their run. But I think Houston is still Houston. I think that's pretty much the best assessment. If you thought going into this year that Houston was, if you bought into that, they might be the team to unseat Golden State, then Houston's a favorite. If you thought they've never proven themselves in the postseason, they're probably a 1 series win and done kind of team, then they're still that. I think they're basically in the same boat they were a year ago. The West has just shifted around them. We did, Taylor and I, a video where we went over the prop bets on win totals for this season. So we've discussed Houston. Their win total bet is currently set at 51.5 wins over under. The Rockets went 53-29 last year. So the projection is that they would either be at least 2 games worse, or they could even be 1 game worse and they'd still hit the over. Any reason to think that they won't hit or surpass 52 wins this year, Rick?
That's actually a good mark. I think the smart play would say the under, because of what we just talked about. Other teams have gotten better. Houston, in my opinion, hasn't gotten better. If anything, they're about the same level of play. As you just said, they might be the 4th best team, when last year people were arguing that they were the 2nd best team, if not the best team. So if you're looking at it that way, then they've taken a step back in terms of the landscape of the West. I would say, if they get to 50 wins, that's a good mark for them, considering the makeup of their team. They might have continuity. They might have, some depth still there and stuff. But you have 2 superstars that are ball-dominant superstars. There's not enough ball to go around to make this team one of the best in the conference. I'm going to say 50-51 wins. I think they go under.
And since Taylor and I did a video where we included Houston, let's check out Oklahoma State. Their projected win total just 32.5, and this is a year after they only lost 33 games, going 49-33. Taylor, can the Thunder avoid losing 50 without Westbrook and without Paul George?
I think they can avoid it, just because there is still decent talent there. It's kind of a veteran team for a team that looks like it's on the verge of a rebuild. They're apparently struggling to trade Chris Paul, so it sounds like they're just going to have him next season. He was not very good last year, which is why I think the Rockets are better. But, if he can kind of turn back the clock a little bit now that he's on his own a little, without James Harden, there's still, Chris Paul, Gallinari, Steven Adams, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. That's not a horrible starting point. I don't know where it gets you in the West. If they were an Eastern team, I would say that's a playoff team. But in the West, obviously, it's a different matter altogether. I think they can avoid 50 losses if things break right. If Paul's healthy, for example, which is a big if. I would be inclined to take the under on 32.5 wins, though. It's just there's so much uncertainty with them and just the quality of the conference as a whole. I think the safer place to take the under, but I wouldn't be surprised if they went over 32.5.
I got so many things to say about this. I'll try and make it quick. Thunder will have over 50 losses. Okay, they're going to be a terrible team. If they were in the East, different story. In this conference, every team has gotten better except the Thunder. If you look from top to bottom, pretty much every team's gotten better, and Phoenix.
The Suns, yep.
And the Thunder will be the 2 worst teams in the West. Although if you look at 538's website, they say the Kings are going to have the worst record. Are you freaking kidding me?
538 has the Suns winning 36 games.
Exactly. They have them winning more games than the Kings. Oh, my God.
That's like double their win total.
I almost had a heart attack there. Kings will be fighting for the 8th spot because What's that?
The Suns will win the West, and the Knicks are going to win the East. That's basically what they're saying. They're going to each go 72-10. They're going to break the Bulls record. That's what that's basically the projections. That's
It's terrible. Okay, let me bring it back because I'm just going to go all over the place. The Thunder are going to have one of the worst records in the conference, which means I think the smart play, like Taylor just said, is they'll have under the win total. They'll have over 50 losses. They don't have a lot of talent to compete. We saw what happened with Phoenix last year. Even though they had some young pieces, some athletic pieces and stuff, they ended up being the worst team in the West. Dallas, who had some good young pieces, they still had a losing record. And the Lakers had on and on and on. There's teams that still had some talent that had losing records and were close to 50 losses. Oklahoma doesn't even have that amount of talent that these other teams have. There's no way they won't have more than 50 losses. Under.
Yeah, I'm taking the under also. I think Oklahoma State lost too many pieces. I think the rest of the West got too much better. I'm just trying to think offhand other than the Suns, who I think is going to be a worse team than Oklahoma City, especially if they do end up finding a trade partner. I mean, they're building up first-round picks. This is not a team that is trying to sneak into a playoff spot this year. This is a team that's going in 3 years from now, we're going to be good. But, they're
the amount of first-round picks they have, though, oh, my goodness.
Oh, amazing decision by the GM. Incredible work. This is one of those things that it's always hard when you're going through it, because I remember growing up in South Florida when the Florida Marlins traded everybody at the end of the 97 season. Every piece they got back in a trade was either on the team or traded for a piece that contributed to the 2003 World Series team. So they went from a 97 World Series champions to one of the worst teams in baseball. And the pieces that they got to trade everybody off, to sell everybody off, turned into another World Series title. And then Jeffrey Loria happened. We're not getting into that. We don't have time. That's a very different subject anyway. So we're going to leave it at, we're all saying Oklahoma City under 32.5 wins this season. I hope you enjoyed that segment from the Odds On Favorites podcast. If you did, there's plenty more where that came from. Click on the link on your screen now to be taken to the complete podcast from this week, or check out the channel to find the other individual segments. And make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel for plenty more sports and sports betting picks, tips, and how-to guides.